So I'm going to talk to you about 5 riders that in my opinion should have had a lot more success before their careers ended. Hello everyone, so today we're going to talk about Grand Prix riders in the 500cc class from the mid-80s to the mid-90s. My name is Niall Mackenzie, I'm an ex-500 Grand Prix rider and also a 3 times British Superbike champion. So first up's Freddie Spencer, and I actually became Freddie Spencer's teammate for 3 years. 2 years at HRC and 1 year with Mamola Yamaha. The second 2 years weren't brilliant because Freddie's showing up sporadically ultimately led to him finishing his Grand Prix career. But he was amazing. He was just such a natural talent at a young age. I'll give you an example. We'd be testing in Australia pre-season with Honda. Myself and Gardner and Yatsushiro was the Japanese rider at the time. We would have put 2 days in at Surface Paradise. All being comparatively close in lap times, very happy with the testing, everything going good. Sometimes Freddie didn't always show up on time, sometimes he was even a couple of days late, and on one occasion he was a couple of days late in Australia. He shows up, first session, did a few laps, came in, quick change of rear shock, went back out faster than all 3 of us, and that was just demoralising before the season got going. But he was just that special, he just made it happen. And I think in some ways that might have been his downfall because he just could do it so easily. But of course, the nature of racing, everyone digs in, other riders dig in, manufacturers dig in and up the ante. So it wasn't enough as time progressed just to have the most natural talent. You had to make everything else happen as well. I don't think his motivation was quite the same because he had shed loads of money. He wasn't quite as fit as he had been in the early days, put on a bit of weight. And as soon as you give anything away, then quite often it's very difficult to pull back from that. But an incredible guy, a good friend now, and amazing to be around at the same time. And Freddie was a pleasant, polite guy, quite introverted, and I don't suppose anyone while he was racing got to know him that well, but I mean he was so big, and he relaunched Honda back in 500 GPs, and he was God. He could do anything he wanted. We were training in California once, and Freddie came for a few days. I could tell he wasn't enjoying the gym work and all of that stuff. He just wanted to race, which was fair enough. Day 3 he didn't show up. Day 4 we were getting a little bit worried about him, so myself and some of the team went back to his hotel, couldn't find him. We actually got into his room and everything was there. Clothes were in the wardrobe, and Freddie was back home. He just decided he wasn't enjoying the training, so he just hopped on a plane and went back home and left everything there. Full on rock star, and he was able to do that. I'd have been sacked, but Freddie carried on. Randy Mamola, a really good friend. Again, kind like the other guys, certainly to me, really looked after me one winter in California. And he was a boyhood hero of mine, so to sit on the grid with him, stand on the podium with him, be around him racing was amazing. And Randy was 4 times runner-up in the 500 World Championship, and he didn't have any weaknesses really. He enjoyed his racing, he was fast, he won as many Grand Prix as many of the world champions, so it didn't quite happen. And you know what the weakness was? I think just teams and machinery let him down at the wrong time. He had a few slip-offs like everyone else did, but he lost world championships with a few points on occasions, and I think there is no great weakness for Randy Mamola. He's a great all-round guy and deserved to win at least 1 or 2 world championships. Yeah, I mean, he was a fan's favourite, he was a paddock favourite. Randy pretty much got on with everyone, and he certainly kept us all going, made us laugh. Particularly towards the end of his career, he rode for Kajiva, and not a particularly competitive bike. And at the same time, like many of us, his hair started to recede a little bit. And I mean, he still had a good head of hair, but he realised that the time was limited. So he decided 1 year he would just show up either with a different hairstyle, maybe a bit of a perm, or a different colour at every single race. So that was a highlight of our 15 weekends, just seeing what hairstyle or hair colour Randy would show up with him at the next event. Yeah, John Kocinski, again, world champion 250 class. He was world champion in World Superbike. Amazing rider. Everyone loved to see John Kocinski race. He was immaculate, he was neat and tidy, didn't crash a lot. He was just looked right on a bike, and quite often you look right, you are right, and there was no question John was like that. But he was different. He was very different to all the other riders in the paddock. He kept himself to himself. When he first showed up, you'd think he was almost a little bit naive. He was mentored by Kenny Roberts, and Kenny Roberts is loud, he's leery. He did what he wanted in the paddock, and John wasn't really like that. And he was very OCD, and a lot of us, including myself, didn't get the OCD thing, everything having to be immaculate, clean, and the Americans, and particularly Kenny and his team around them, gave him a hard time. And now it's just a given. Everyone understands that side of people, but particularly sportsmen, we're all riddled with OCD, but John just stood out, and bully's the wrong word, but he definitely got some unnecessary stick, and it's just because everyone didn't really understand. But no one ever underestimated his talent. His cleanliness was probably second to none compared to everyone else, and one thing he did look after and wanted to be mint was his motorhome, more than anyone else. And I remember mid-season he showed up at one race, his motorhome showed up and the driver went home. Won't mention any names, but he got sacked. What happened was he committed the cardinal sin and used John's toilet in between races in the motorhome, and no one gets to use John's toilet except John Kocinski. And that's fair enough. That was the rules, and the rules got broken and the driver got sacked. And one other John Kocinski story, and I kind of understand him in a way. He had a girlfriend, again, she'll remain nameless at one point, and we were all we were all checked into a hotel in Brazil, Sao Paulo race, and we all come down to dinner, and John was telling us, and we agreed that the water was cold in the rooms, and it was a bit of a disaster. He said, anyway, I got round that. I just got my girlfriend to pull the hairdryer in the bathroom, get that going. When I stood in the shower, she just held the hairdryer on me to keep warm. He will remain nameless, as everyone else does, said at that point, just too bad she didn't chuck the hairdryer in the shower. Christian Sarron, another great friend of mine, and spent a lot of time socially with Christian and in the paddock, and raced with him a lot. He had me in the grass a few times, not deliberately, he just crashed a lot, but he was so fast. He won a race in Hockenheim, he won a wet race in Hockenheim, which was amazing, but didn't quite win any in the dry, though he was on the podium on numerous occasions. His strong points was where he's blindingly fast, but he rode on the edge of tyres when there was no grip, so of course he had lots of high sides, more crashes than anyone, lots of concussions which weren't good, and he'd be concussed in the morning and riding in the afternoon, as many of us did, but Christian probably more than anybody, and that's one thing that has improved a lot with safety and people looking after riders' health, so that's moved on a lot. He had 5 pole positions in 1988, consecutive pole positions, which was incredible at the time. We just knew Christian was going to be fast. Didn't finish as many races, but he just was incredible. But his downside was he just rode on the edge of the tyres, and his riding style didn't allow him any safety margin. So he was either lap record, fastest on the track, or upside down. He was also incredibly manic. He was hyperactive. I mean, we all like to be busy and do our sports and everything, but we like some downtime as well. Christian just never had any downtime. He lived in a lovely house in Clermont-Ferrand, south of France, that we visited once or twice. And even that, when you go for a relaxing weekend away from racing with Christian, it was It was never like that. An example would be we'd be maybe off-roading all day and then we're just chilling out, listening to music or something, sitting around, and you could see Christian in the background. He'd be pushing a folded up table tennis table up his drive, and you can see he's gesticulating, we're going to have some table tennis, and the last thing anyone wanted to do was play table tennis. We just wanted to relax, have a beer and listen to music, and he's getting closer and closer. Consequently, any breaks or holidays at Christian's house, you needed another holiday just to get over living with Christian for a week. Great fun at the time, but quite tiring, but wouldn't change it for the world. So Doug Chandler, Californian from Salinas in California. Again, someone I became great friends with, spent a lot of time with him travelling around Europe. Amazing talent. I mean, he was Bubba Schobert fast on a flat tracker. He was 3 times Superbike champion in the States. Amazing rider, but he did it all under the radar. He was never one to be telling anyone how good he was. He just made it happen. And I think, and also lots of podiums in 500 GPs. He was just a great all-round rider. But I think if he had one weakness, he was almost too quiet, because while most Americans are quite in your face, making things happen, letting everyone know how good they are, Doug just kind of got on with his business. But I think ultimately that might have been his downfall. His talent wasn't in question, but sometimes you just got to go and knock on doors and remind people. And I think his career should have lasted a lot longer than it did in 500 Grand Prix. A classic example was, I believe, in 94 or 95, he was riding for Cagiva. The penultimate race of the year was in Argentina, and Doug was on the podium there, had an amazing race, looked great on the Cagiva, standout rider. Everyone was thinking he's going to be back in 96. The last race then was in Barcelona, and he had the disaster. And it was a classic example of riders only being, or sportsmen only being as good as their last event. Doug had a bad Barcelona, didn't come back in 96, and his Grand Prix career was over. And it's quite shocking just watching it happen. So that was Doug, but yeah, another amazing rider. So if you enjoyed this and you missed last week's chat on 500 Grand Prix World Champions, just click here if you want to take a look.